Welcome to Blackbriar Gaming. Today we've been gifted the promised Legacy Faction PDFs. A few days after the release of the core rules and factions, but considering we were told to expect a delay, I'd call this a win. We've got free rules for all those factions that will not get new model support for the release of the Old World. Noting of course that most of these factions have decent model lines through Age of Sigmar. We won't see arcane journals for these factions, but I'm sure the community will sort that out. There's been a lot of noise about the legacy nature of these factions, so I'm keen to have a cursory look at their rules and discuss whether these factions have been given the attention they deserve or if they were an obvious afterthought. I won't be going too deeply into the rules today. I want to do army build videos for each of these factions along with the core factions. Today, I just want to see if these factions have been given the attention that they rightly deserve. Just a quick note before we get into it, a subscribe and a like really helps us reach a bigger audience, so if you enjoyed the video, hit those buttons down below. So we have a bunch of factions coming today. We have the Lizardmen, the Dark Elves, the Vampire Counts, the Ogre Kingdoms, the Skaven, the Daemons of Chaos, and Chaos Dwarves. That last one, of course, we haven't seen a Chaos Dwarf proper army list outside of a Forge World book for a long time. And this, I'll just quietly say now, this list does not disappoint. But we'll go through them one by one. It's so good to see the real names of these factions back, not the Age of Sigmar identifiers with the crazy spelling of certain things. So let's just go through them and see what we're getting. There is a bit of a mistake in one of them, which I will get to and call out when we get there, but let's have a look. So here we have the Dark Elves. So legacy army list for use with the Old World rules. Essentially, they don't go into too much depth about what that means, but you've got the Dark Elves. What we're seeing with these compositions of these army lists, I think is really interesting. This one doesn't show it so much. We see it in some more of the others, but they're very much adding flavor through these compositions. We won't see different compositions for these factions like we will for the core factions with the arcane journals. So this is exactly how you will run this faction if you want to. Now there's a lot of talk that says these factions won't be legal at tournaments. Frankly, I find that absolutely ridiculous. In Australia, I don't even know if we have official Games Workshop tournaments. Certainly I've never been to one, and any tournament that I would play in would include these factions. Here in Canberra, we've got a bit of a fantasy scene going, and I don't think there'll be any issues with running these, and I dare say that's the same for most of the places where you will want to actually play games. But looking at the composition, you can start to see a bit of the flavor. When you look down in the special section, you can take 1 unit of Blackguard per Dark Elf Noble taken, so they start to attach the army list restrictions to HQ units, which I find really interesting. So it encourages you to theme your list and not just take whatever the best units are. You can get, and the other one here is you can get a War Hydra or a Charybdis in the special section if your general is a High Beastmaster, which I really like. It's actually encouraging you to take the High Beastmaster, which I just don't think anyone took in 8th edition. Other than that, you can take Charybdis and War Hydras in rare as well, but you've only got your 25% there, and you're definitely going to want some Doomfire Warlocks and some Reaper Bolt Throwers. So it's going to get a bit tight, so having a general as a High Beastmaster is actually not a terrible choice. Now going down, we've got all the usual things you would expect. The special rules of all of the factions have very much changed, just like they have for the core rules. Elves are not the absolutely broken, ridiculous monsters that they were in 8th edition. The eternal hatred only applies now to High Elves. Dark Elves don't just hate everybody because they're hateful creatures. They hate High Elves because they were wronged by them so horrifically. We do have the Strike First just for really the headquarter units. They're not headquarter units. What am I doing? This isn't 40k. For the Lords and the Hero choices. Are there even Lords and Heroes anymore? Do they differentiate? You just got characters now, don't you? Yeah, there you go. For the characters, I should say. You've got Strike First and Murderous, which helps you wound things. I think that's a reroll of 1. So the special rules have been really drawn down with the Dark Elves, just like the High Elves. You'll see actually throughout this Dark Elf list, a lot of things mirror the changes that were made for High Elves. Are the Dark Elves as good as the High Elves? Possibly not, but they do different things, and they do things in different and interesting ways. So here we've got the Dark Elf Noble, absolutely fine, no issues there. You've got the Dark Elf Sorceress, You will note, much like the core factions, the faction-specific spell lists, what's the word I'm looking for? Laws, there we go. They're not as fluffed out as they used to be in 8th edition. You only get a few spells, 2 or 3, for each of the factions, so you don't have a full Dark Elf lore like you used to with 6 or 7 spells. That's across the board. Skaven in particular, it's very noteworthy because they used to... I'm getting ahead of myself. We're not talking about Skaven now. I can't help myself. I love Skaven. But going down, we've got the Sorceress. You've got access to a lot of different laws here. They've got all the various rules. The Hecatare's Blessing. I haven't looked at that special rule. We might just pop down to the special rules and have a bit of a discussion about that. Where is it? Past the items. Here we go. Hecatare's Blessing. Once per game, a model with this special rule may re-roll a single failed casting roll. There's a lot of once per game stuff in this edition I found. I don't love that. It's hard to track, but it is what it is. So a single re-roll on a failed casting. That's fine. I don't think it's as good as it used to be from memory, but it's absolutely fine. So Dark Elf Sorceress, can you chuck him on a Dark Pegasus again? Maybe. Let's find out. Page 8. Here's the High Beastmaster. The Goad Beast rule looks pretty good. It gives them plus D3 to their attack characteristics, which when you're giving that to a War Hydra is pretty spicy. And they can do that as well with and still fight, which I think they had to maybe give up. There were shenanigans. It was never good in 8th edition. I remember that much. But this sounds absolutely fine. They're quite cheap for what you're getting, and it does unlock extra Hydra shenanigans as well. And the Hydras look good, so it's definitely something I might think of. But you've got the Death Hag here on a Cauldron of Blood. The Cauldron of Blood looks super spicy. The Gifts of Cain, they all look pretty fantastic. Not losing Frenzy when you lose combat is definitely not nothing. And the -1 leadership characteristic I think is really nice as well within command range for enemy units. That's spicy. That's going to make a difference. So they've got all the things you'd expect. They hate all enemies, the Death Hags, which is really nice. They've got Frenzy. They're striking first, poison attacks. Love to see it. This is all the kind of stuff you expect. It's very much 8th edition armies in a balanced and more deliberate and consistent manner is the general vibe across it all. Now, I can't go too deep into all these army lists. We simply don't have the time. But you've got everything you expect, all the units you want. I'm not seeing any obvious exclusions from units. If you could play it in 8th edition, I'm pretty sure the gist is you can play it in this edition. In the old world, is it edition? I don't know. In this new game, I suppose. There's the Dark Pegasus. Fabulous. Love to see it. You've got Cold Ones. All the same stuff. All the same stuff you expect. So you've got your Dark Elf City Guard, which are your regular infantry. The repeater crossbow still looks wonderful. That high ballistic skill is very nice. They're gonna do some absolute work. Much like the High Elves, they've got the Elven Reflexes there, which is the +1 initiative, and they've got Martial Prowess, which is where they get to attack on the ranks and I think the flanks with extra ranks. It rhymes. It sounds fabulous. Let's have a look. Martial Prowess, the unit of special rule can make supporting attacks to its flank or rear, as well as its front. Very good. So if they've got spears, they can get extra attacks to the side and the rear. So they make these wonderful little boxes, these squares, infantry squares, if you will. That sounds like a thing. The Black Arc Corsairs, now that they're on 25mm, you'll actually be able to rank these up. I've gotten some of the new models, and ranking them up is just a nightmare. They've got the Dragon Cloaks, which I think have also had a bit of a nerf in line with the Kracian White Lions and their cloaks, so they're not as ridiculous as they used to be, so they're more of a deliberate choice rather than an obvious choice. You've got the Blackguard of Nagron, which no one really played in 8th edition because they just weren't very good, whereas now their halberds, their dread halberds, they look pretty good. That fight next rank, I think, will make such a difference now that not everyone's doing that anymore. The Armorbane 1, along with the -1 AP, I was having a chat with my mate Dean, and he was saying the Blackguard are kind of like worse Phoenix Guard. Yes and no. They have Stubborn, which I don't know how impactful that's going to be in this edition, but we'll find out, I suppose. But they're fine. They're playable. The Executioners also good. No issues here. I'm not sure which is better between the Executioners and the Blackguard. We'll have to wait and see. I'm feeling it might be the Executioners because it looks like they're swinging those great swords at initiative, which is super spicy. Look, you've got the Shades, you've got Daughters of Cain, you've got the Witches, you've got those Sisters of Slaughter, the newer models. The Witches look a lot of fun. They look like a lot of fun, just as they were. They still are. You get them their 5+ ward from the Cauldron of Blood. These are the kind of things you're going to want to do. Harpies look fantastic. That skirmishing piece and the fly is going to be really useful for them. It'll be interesting to see what people do for those models. I think there's a lot of choices out there that people can go with. Cold One Knights look great. Dark Riders are still as good as they used to be. Doomfire Warlocks have been quite toned down, which is good. They were broken in 8th edition, so their spells are a little harder to get off, and they're not as good, which is exactly what we needed. So that's just fine. They do get that 5+ ward save now against everyone, so Slanesh models don't just magically get through it, I think, like they used to, as long as it's non-magical attacks. And I like that non-magical piece comes into it a lot. Magical weapons are actually going to be very meaningful in this edition, which is great to see. You've got the Cauldron of Blood, you got chariots all over the place, you got the Blood Rack Shrine, all good. Black Dragons look fun. Let's keep going. War Hydra. This guy looks so good. He's stomping, he's eating things, he's blowing his fiery breath all over the place. It's only 200 points, which for a monster like this is pretty affordable. So I'm a bit excited about the War Hydra and getting those extra D3 attacks, because he only has 2. Getting the extra D3 from that Beastmaster might be a thing that people want to do. You've got a Medusa, very good. So yeah, look, if you could run it in 8th, you can run it here. Here's the Charybdis, doing slightly different things, way more attacks than the War Hydra. Maybe it's better. I don't know. We'll get deeper into it. You got the Bolt Throwers, still just as good. I think they're slightly more points, but I could be wrong. They're in line with what the High Elves are doing. And then we get to the magic items. So each of these factions has plenty of magic items. I was worried with the legacy nature of them, they might really be reduced compared to the core factions, but they're not. I was comparing the Dark Elves to the High Elves, and their magic items are, they've got a similar amount of options. I won't go deep into them. We don't have the time. That's the Dark Elves. You can see here the Law of Nagaroth, much like the other laws of the core factions, is much reduced, but it's doing certain things that you want to do, which is great. Next, into the Lizardmen. I won't go deep into Lizardmen. It's the same kind of idea. Cold-Blooded is still as good as it always was. You're rolling that extra D6 for their leadership and picking the highest, which is just fantastic. These guys were a lot of fun, and the new models from the Age of Sigmar range are absolutely fantastic. So you've got everything here you could want, and they're just good, right? These factions are fleshed out. I'm not seeing a difference in quality or in balance or in anything. Magic items, the quality of their lore, the type of magic they can do, the attention to detail. I'm not really seeing any difference between these and the core factions. A lot of effort, I think, was put into these. It was a labor of love for the team, and I think they loved these factions as much as the core ones and wanted to make sure they were so playable and so much fun for people that have these armies. You will not be disappointed if you have one of these legacy armies. Vampire counts. A little bit different. So much like Tomb Kings now, once you start to crumble, you don't just get to pick another Necromancer and chuck them into the job, which is punishing. And Tomb Kings were always worse in 8th edition because of that. But Vampire counts are now in line with that. You can see here, once again, in the restrictions on certain units in line with the characters that you take. So, here we go. You can have 1 unit of Spirit Hosts per Khan Wraith. And there's no other way to get Spirit Hosts, not Spirit Roasts. Once again, if your general is a Strigoi Ghoul King, you can have a 0-1 unit of Vargheists or Terrorgeists, maybe taken as special choices instead of rare choices. So it just opens things up, right? It lets you take certain things in line with the characters, which is really nice. The big change here was the leadership of the vampires, which I thought was really interesting, and it's going to be fascinating to see how this impacts the balance and the power of this faction. Just leadership 8, that is the highest leadership that they can get from my understanding. And look, there might be some shenanigans that you can pull to go higher, but at a cursory glance, leadership 8 is about as high as it goes for the vampires and the vampire count there. Certainly the necromancers aren't go above that. They're at leadership 8 too. So that's a bit different to the Tomb Kings. There's a differentiator there in the different types of undead and obviously all the different units and how they play as well. But vampire counts have taken a bit of a hit there by the looks of it in their power with the leadership of their vampires. So we'll wait and see how that plays out. But when it comes to the undead, all the things you can want. There's so much fun going on here. The corpse cards in particular look like a lot of fun. Zombies, you can raise them all over the place and you can put them past their starting units and just fill the board with zombies, which is lots of fun. Your crypt ghouls still have poison attacks. They're going to be fantastic. All kind of monsters, swarms. They're doing exactly what you want to be doing. You've still got Ethereal on the Spirit Host, noting that you can only have one of those per, and I think that's the only way to take them. All right, let's double check, but you can only have one of those because they're good, right? Ethereal is just so good because ranged magical attacks are quite rare. And when you pick your unit you're going into, you can just be an absolute pain. I had some terrible experiences with that in 8th edition. But it looks like the only way to get them is by taking a Khan Wraith or Tomb Banshee. Please correct me if I'm missing something there. But that's the kind of restrictions we're seeing. Just bring a little bit of balance to the game. In fact, the balance of these legacy factions, almost from that perspective, seems to be a little bit better than it was for the core factions. Everyone's putting around those ridiculous lists of 20 gyrocopters for the dwarves flying around. If you're doing that, sure, if that's what floats your boat, go nuts. No one's going to play you. But the balance for here, I think it's been almost a little more thoughtful with the legacy nature because they have to last a bit longer because we won't see the updates. And I could be wrong. I'm sure people will find absolute shenanigans, but we'll wait and see. What have we got here? Iron Blasters, 0 to 1 Morphang Cavalry per 1,000 points. Good, so you can't just fill the board with cavalry and go to town. You've got to focus on those core units if you're looking for bigger armies. This is good. The ogres look great. Same kind of idea. You've got monstrous infantry all over the place, whole bunch of wounds, whole bunch of attacks. They're doing impact hits when they're coming in. They were pretty strong in 8th edition, and they're looking pretty strong here. I haven't gone too deep into this list. I do have an ogre army, so I really should have a better look at this. But if you look at their bulls, same kind of strength, same kind of toughness, those wounds, those attacks, they're going to do great. They're going to do absolute work. And I think they're all still on the same bases that they were in 8th edition. Maybe a few things might have changed, but the ogres, the Iron Guts, your regular kind of ogre is on a 40 mil base. I think just like it was in 8th. So that's going to be a nice army for people who had ogres previously. They're not going to have to stress about rebasing or changing up the way their movement trays make their base sizes. So that's nice. But yeah, everything's here, right? All the units are here. Balance has been put into these units. At a cursory glance, they're doing what you want them to do. The rules are more simplified, more streamlined, more consistent, and that's especially so when we get to the Skaven. Now, I will mention right up front, there's a bit of an issue with the Skaven. They've got a special rule right down the bottom that replaces the shenanigans they used to have, and it is called Scurrying Masses. Whilst within 3 inches of a friendly unit, this model gains a positive modifier to its leadership characteristic equal to that unit's current rank bonus, up to a maximum of leadership 10. Now, it's going to be +3 for Horde units, +2 for those units that don't have Horde, if you have the Scurrying Masses rule, and that's going to make a really big difference to whether you're falling back in good order or you're fleeing. The issue, and look, this was always going to happen, right? The issue is that no one in this army list has that special rule. Now, we can assume certain units would have had it, and this is how I'll be playing it at home, and if I'm running any tournaments, how I'll be house ruling it, is that clan rats in particular would have Scurrying Masses, right? Hands down, no arguments. There's no slaves anymore in this army list. I don't know if that was a choice because they just didn't differentiate that much from clan rats, or if they chose to remove, and look, maybe I'm just not seeing it. Or maybe they chose it because that word is growing a little out of fashion with the woke crowd. But we have Storm Vermin, we have clan rats. Would the Storm Vermin have got Scurrying Masses? I don't know. Maybe they would. Maybe they wouldn't. It might be worth looking back at the 7th edition Skaven book and seeing which units were able to use the Skaven special rule. But was it all of them? I can't remember. Scurrying Masses? No one has it, right? So there we go. There's a mistake. There's an issue. Will that get fixed and will these get redone? maybe Games Workshop have edited and updated the Horus Heresy Legacy units, which frankly I found absolutely shocking and a welcome change to how they've treated Legacy units in the past. So there's no reason why they wouldn't come in and update these where there's obvious mistakes. So we'll just wait and see, I guess. But look, the Skaven are doing all the kind of things you want Skavens to do. There's two big pieces here. The magic is not ridiculous anymore. Skaven in particular, because they were using a 7th edition army book back in 8th edition, their magic was out of control. It did silly things that broke the game, and just, it was ridiculous. And that made the faction very much, if your magic was good, you were going to win that game. If it wasn't, things were going to get a bit dicey, which isn't how I want to play an army. So we've only got now, if you look down at the Skaven lore, I think it's Lore of the Horned Rat, you've got 3 spells, right? You've got Skitter Leap, Wart Lightning, and Cloud of Corruption. All of these are themed to the different types of sorcerers that the Skaven are bringing along, but you're no longer turning a bunch of enemy soldiers into rats. You're not just turning your enemies' extremely expensive elite infantry into rats, which is both disappointing and very reasonable. So that is a thing. Same. If you look at a bunch of these Skaven units, in particular, the Screaming Bell is a good example. We'll go up. Magic items, they're so much fun. The Hellpit Abomination is still looking just fantastic. The Doom Wheel is no longer just blowing itself up all over the place. And this is a theme across the new Skaven army list. Things are a lot more consistent. It can shoot itself. If you screw up, you zap. So there is still a bit of the shenanigans around the place, but you're only doing a single wound, right? And from memory, with the Doom Wheel, if you rolled doubles or triples on the dice that you moved, bad things happened and it went in random directions. But in this case, that's not happening anymore. Same. If we go up to the Screaming Bell, if you roll a double 2, every unit that is within this model's command range suffers D3 strength 4 hits with an AP of -2. Sure, that's bad. Is your Screaming Bell just disappearing and blowing up in the first turn anymore? No, it's not. And that's fine. They've brought some consistency to the Skaven, which means they're actually a bit more reliable on the table. And you won't have those feel bad moments, even though they were hilarious. I did have an opponent once blow up their Screaming Bell in the first turn. And look, we had a giggle about it, but it just meant he lost the game right from turn 1. And that's no fun. It's, random can be entertaining, but you want it to be entertaining within the context of a game and still being able to play it after that random thing has happened. So the Screaming Bell now looks absolutely fantastic, as opposed to a bit of a gamble. I mean, it was always good, but the gambles are a bit gone. These units are all doing what they used to do. They're all in there. They're well thought out. They're point costed appropriately. There's no just terrible ideas and thoughts in here. When the Horus Heresy Legacy dropped, there were some units in there that were just utterly confusing and made no sense whatsoever. The attack bikes being a great example, which GW, in their defense, have updated since. But we're not seeing this here. I'm not seeing any units that look just absolutely terrible and not thought out. Attention to detail, minus that special rule which has been missed, has been given to these armies, which is just so nice to see, because these armies are important. They are part of the old world vibe. People have them. People want to play them. The demons I won't go into. I don't really know them that well. I never played them in 8th edition. Even though I've got a few sitting upstairs. But they look strong. They still look strong. Hopefully not as strong as they were. We'll have to wait and see. I know in 8th edition they were utterly broken. But they've still got those 5+ wards all over the place. But not against, and I could be wrong, but I don't think it's against magical attacks, which did make a difference. And I don't know if that was the case in 8th. But it will definitely make a difference here. So they suffered that were caused by non-magical enemy attacks. I will definitely be looking to bring magical attacks in armies. That'll be a consideration because it will make a difference to certain factions that you're playing against. But I won't go deep into demons. I don't know them that well. I can't say whether they were or weren't fantastic and how that compares. But here's the most exciting one for me, the Chaos Dwarves. So we had their army list in the Forge World books, which I do have, and they are just stunning. But they now have their very own Old World list, which just looks so good. So you've got all the benefits of dwarves, but on top of that, you've got light cavalry, you've got monstrous cavalry, you can bring some orcs along within your main army list. Just for reasons. You've got monstrous infantry, you've got wild artillery that's doing things that other artillery in the game is not doing, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You've got your general, who's also a sorcerer, but can also fight in combat. These guys just seem so good. I don't think I'll be able to resist building a Chaos Dwarf army. Look, and the models for this one are probably the hardest to do of any army. They simply don't exist. But geez, there's some good 3D printed options out there, and that is 100% the direction that I'll be going. And I won't even feel bad, because it's not like you can buy them from Games Workshop anyway. So 3D print away and feel fabulous about it, people. But this army list just looks so good. It's just got such diversity to it. As you would expect, it's got all the things in here. You've got the hobgoblins having their real character put back in. You've got the Iron Sworn, which are great. You've got the Infernal Guard, just like you would expect. Giving them the blunderbuss there will be a lot of fun. You've got the Fireborn, which aren't the absolute auto-include that I think they were in 8th edition. They're just good. They're just regular good. You've got Hobgoblins, sneakier Hobgoblins. You've got the Wolf Riders, Bull Centaurs. You've got everything, all right? And then when you start to get into their crazy artillery units, this is where things start to get really wild. So you've got the Iron Demon here, which you could stick a cannonade on, or the Skullcracker, which is going to do 2d6 plus 1, I think, impact hits, which is wild. 2d6 plus 2 if it's got a Skullcracker on it. My goodness, that's a lot of fun. At what? Let's see. And it's got Stomp as well, the Iron Demon. Oh, it's so good. Toughness 7. It is a tough boy with 7 wounds. Yikes. That's going to be powerful. So the only thing I will say out of all these legacy factions, the Chaos Dwarves, at the moment, cursory glance, they look strong. And I could be wrong. They might be balanced. But at the moment, they look really good. This one in particular. So you've got the Death Shrieker rocket launcher. You've got the mortar in here. And the big difference here from other artillery that I've seen, and there might be other examples of it, but when you look at the demolition rockets, multiple wounds, D6. Now, the big thing in this, in the old world, and the difference from 8th edition, is that cannons and such do D3, or they do D3 plus 1, as do rock lobbers, I think, stone throwers, I should say, and most artillery. But the Chaos Dwarves, they don't care about that. They're doing D6 wounds, and they will take out your monster in one hit if they get super lucky. Noting that it's only strength 6, so that strength is down, but most monsters are also sitting around that strength, toughness 5, toughness 6 as well. So there's a good chance, if you roll well, you are taking out big, monstrous behemoths, whatever it is, in those single shots, which is cheeky. It's a cheeky thing to do. So the Chaos Dwarves, they've got some shenanigans, right? And I think people are going to pour a lot of love over this army list. I think it is a good one, which is so nice to see. They haven't had a real proper army list within the core set of the rules, I guess, which this kind of still isn't, but kind of is, for a long time. So I am super hyped for the Chaos Dwarves. All the other factions look absolutely fine. And the end state here is that these are fine. These legacy factions, the rules that we've gotten, they're not only fine, they look on par with what we're getting for the core factions. It feels like the same attention to detail, minus that one Skaven cheeky rule, the same love, the same passion has really been poured into these legacy factions as it has for the core factions, which is such a relief and so nice to see. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think of the legacy factions once we've all had a chance to have a really good read of them. Are there any things that you think have been missed? Are there any units which you think were not given the power they deserved? Do any of these look absolutely broken? Noting that I think the Chaos Dwarves are going to be quite strong. Most importantly, keep rolling those dice and keep frothing for fantasy. It's here. The old world's here. There's a lot more content coming for it. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Bye.